Ian, incredibly, it's been 40 years since Dave Clement's sad passing, and I would imagine few QPR players know Dave Clement as well as you knew Dave Clement. Firstly, what was he like?
He was a really nice guy, a family man, great to be on the training pitch with because he was so fit, and his presence was good. You know, it was good for the team, and I mean, especially the '75 team. I mean, we all got on together, and I mean, he was a valuable member of that team, and for him to, or circumstances, what had happened was just unbelievable. When I first knew about it, we was on the training pitch, and Terry Venables come over, and he was walking towards me, and I thought, oh hell, what have I done wrong now? And he said, can I have a quick word with you, Gilly? So I said, yeah, all right. And anyway, he told me about it, and I couldn't believe it. So he said to me, look, I know it's a bit of a shock to you. He said, if you want to go home and then come back the next day, just so it just sinks in. I said, no, I'll just carry on. But it was on your mind all the time, you know. And for him to do what was done was just didn't make sense. It really did not make sense, because the only thing that I can honestly think, because he was such a fitness fanatic and he broke his leg, and I think that might have affected him. I don't know, I might be wrong. I mean, he had everything, which I thought he had everything in his life. He had two smashing kids, he had a lovely wife, and he had everything going. He was always immaculately dressed. He had a nice presence about him. And for that to happen, it was just unreal.
What made him so special as a person?
I don't know, I think it was just just the way that he was dressed, the way that he presented himself. He was never late for training. He trained hard. He probably trained hard more than anyone, apart from Mickey Leach. Mickey Leach and Dave were like super fit. And it was just his presence. He'd done everything right. It's like what I would call like a Bobby Moore. I know, I've heard stories like Bobby Moore. He used to come in, he was always immaculate. Come in, he'd train, do all these things. Everything was right about him. He was a model professional, and that's what Dave was.
How much did Dave help you out? Because you actually played together for 11 years. He was there when you made your debut in '68, and you were there when he played his final QPR game in 1979.
I know. I think we had a good... We used to talk a lot, and, you know, when Dave Sexton obviously was there, he used to organise us, and we used to play off of each other, me and Dave, and Dave was more adventurous because he didn't have a winger. I had Davy Thomas, so I could keep supplying him. So I didn't get forward so much then, whereas Davy would. But then when I did get forward, we had like a rotation system, and the rotation system worked very well. And then David dropped back, and we used to talk about things like that, maybe after training or after the game, and, you know, we got on well, and we was a good unit. And much the same, well, we didn't have to talk to Frank, because Frank McClintock and David Webb, they were masters. You know, they were superb. But with me and Dave, like near enough being the same age, that's what we used to do.
That group had a real mix of characters in the dressing room. You had the loud, more extrovert characters, had the more quiet ones. Where did Dave fit in there in terms of his character?
Dave was quiet. Before a game, you know, mainly home games, obviously, but when he used to come in, He'd get stripped, and it would take him ages to start getting his gear on, and then he'd go missing. He'd go into the toilet, and he'd be sick. But that was one of his. It was nerves, and all the lads used to like joke and say, "There he goes again." But then he'd get out onto the pitch, warm up, and I mean his warm ups, it lasted like 20 minutes. I mean he was really thorough in what he'd done, and ready for the game.
What's your favourite story about Dave, be it on the pitch or off the pitch, that really sums him up or makes you smile?
Well, one of the funniest things that I can think of was we used to go to Dave Sexton used to take us to a training camp called Hennef, and it was where all the national German team were, and they weren't there when we were there, but it was a big sports complex, and we used to stay there for about 10 days, and someone said to Dave, "There, you're putting some weight on." He said, "Yeah, I know, I'm going to sort that out." Well, when we used to finish training, we used to train in the morning and the afternoon, and then have our evening meal, and then we would possibly go up to, like it was in a forest, they had a big gym there where we would do things. But before that, before we was having our evening meal, we always used to stand round by where the swimming pool was. It was a big Olympic thing. It was massive, open air. And he come walking down. He had this small suitcase. And we thought, what's he got? And he opened the suitcase and he said, "Right, lads." He said, "There's a cigar. There's a cigar." He come out with all these cigars. He never smoked. And I remember Davey Webb said, "What you got them for?" He said, "Well, it's to make me lose weight." He only put a pound on him weight. But that's the character he was, because he modelled him. He wanted to be fit all the time. And we all burst out laughing, because he didn't just have one or two cigars, he had a box of them. You know, it was like in a little suitcase. So, anyway, he carried that on for a little while, and then he stopped it, obviously, because, you know, getting addicted to cigars. But it cured him. You know, he lost a pound in weight, and not that he needed to, because he looked super fit anyway.
Should he have played more for England?
Yeah, possibly. The trouble is, it's like anything. If there's injuries, and you manage to get in, just like myself, I only got in because there was a couple of injuries. I only played 3 games, but I was over the moon about it. I think that I think he possibly could have played more games.
40 years on from Dave's passing, how much do you miss him?
I miss him a lot. I still think about him, the times that we had. The good times we had, the bad times we had. But I was always close to Dave, you know. And then when the 75 team sort of broke up, and then he sort of progressed, and he used to live in Crowthorne. And I used to go there, and we used to go off to training, but he was always, and then he took over like with the PFA man, so he's very thorough. He loved anything like that, so he had a responsibility of dealing with younger players and telling them what to do. So he was very well respected like that, because he gave a lot of time to especially to the youngsters, which was good, because they didn't really understand. Just like myself, when I was an apprentice, you you didn't have a clue, but you didn't have anybody to try and help you. You had different players going back years ago that, you know, on the training pitch they talked to you and whatnot, but it never seemed to happen too much. So that's why I still miss the man. He was a good man and a good player, and I just can't get my head around it with the way that it was done. You know, there had to be a reason for what had happened, and I just, you know, as I told you earlier, that's the only thing I can think of. Maybe something to do with his fitness, with the broken leg. I don't know. I just really don't know.
And very finally, how do you best remember him?
Dave, walking into the ground, always immaculate, always polite and helpful. People would go up to him. There was no problem. He would sign, like most of us, but he just had this aura about him, and he was really, he was a really nice guy.
That was Dave Clement.
That was Dave Clement.